All right, we now have quorum. Marietta, was that you that just joined via phone?
Yes, it is.
Great. So with Marietta and with Sylvia, we have a quorum, Bill.
Okay, and I've let my dog into the room, which means she won't be scratching at the door. So hopefully that will be good for the night, and welcome all. Like to open the meeting of February 23, 2022, the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. My name is Bill Irwin. I'm the chair of the commission, and we'll start with our introductions. And let me see if I can put this up in a way that so I'll start with Kirk, if you wouldn't mind.
Good evening, Kirk Waite from Georgia.
Thank you. Rowena.
Rowena Brown from Richford.
Thank you. Al.
Alvo Joe from St. Albans Town.
Great. And Sylvia.
Sylvia Johnson from Isle of Lamont.
Great. Yvonne.
Yvonne Danduran, Town of Franklin.
Thank you, sir. Bob Bierman.
Bob Bierman from South Hero.
Thank you, sir. Lynn.
Lynn Douglas Fletcher.
Thank you, ma'am. Marietta.
Marietta Schulten, St. Albans Town.
Thank you. Andy.
Andy Alling, North Hero.
Thank you, sir. Barkley.
Yeah, Barkley Morris from Grand.
Thank you. Always like your backgrounds. Bethany.
Bethany Remmers, staff.
Thank you, Bethany. Day Devlin.
It looks like Day has some audio troubles, but she typed in the chat that she is staff.
Great. Thank you. Dean.
Dean Pierce, I'm also on staff.
Thank you, sir. Egan.
Egan Murphy, St. Albans Town.
Thank you. Emily.
Emily Cloft, staff.
Thank you, ma'am. Jude, our special guest for the night.
Good evening, everyone. Jude Smith-Kelly, Abundant Sun.
We're very glad to have you here tonight. Thank you. Lori.
Sorry, Lori Rupel from Fletcher.
No problem, Lori. Sarah.
Sarah Had, Fairfax.
Thank you, Sarah. Colleen. Colleen, can you hear us? You might be on mute. We can come back to you, Colleen, and we'll go to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Nance, Swanton Village.
Great, nice swan there.
Thank you.
That's a real good close-up. Yeah, it's not easy to get.
I just want a Swanton Swans, so.
Excellent, excellent. And besides Colleen, did I miss anyone? All right, and Colleen, any? Oh my gosh. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's introduce her.
All right, Catherine DeVittrick on staff.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, Bill.
Terrible, terrible. All right, well, thank you all for being here tonight, and like to open for any public comment. If you have a comment, you can raise your hand, you can open your mic and speak. You can put something in the chat. I see no hands, I see no chat. And that's about that. We'll move on then to the minutes of the December 2021 meeting, which were enclosed in your package. Any motions relative to the minutes of our last meeting?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Second,
Second by Al. Any discussion on the minutes?
I'll just note that Elizabeth sent me a few typo grammatical corrections, which we'll go ahead and make.
Great, thank you. And are you, Yvonne and Al, glad to accept those editorial changes?
yes.
Yes, I am.
Very good. All right, all in favor of the minutes of the January 26, 2022 Board of Commissioners meeting, please say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? All right, so the minutes pass, and I thank you. I should have noted during the discussion, as usual, they are quite well taken. Really appreciate the diligence to obtain those. So we are at our very first presentation from Jude Rachel from Abundant Sun. A number of you should remember that we brought on Ms. Rachel to help us in our effort to prepare ourselves for work with regard to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, rather than to leap off into some sort of statement that might sound good. We wanted to understand what we really need to know before we take actions that can do good in this arena. And we have the pleasure of welcoming her tonight for her first presentation to this board. Please, Ms. Rachel, take it away.
Bill, I'm happy to give a brief introduction as well,
Thank
if
you.
that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
I should have prepped you ahead of time that it's Raquel, and I'm sorry I didn't do that.
Thank you. At least I'm consistent.
Yes, and I'm sorry I didn't prep you ahead of time with that. I just wanted to note that I've known Jude, Dr. Raquel, for almost 2 years now, and we both served on one of the governor's COVID recovery task forces focused on local communities. And she is a internationally well-known leadership and governance consultant. And what she's going to be doing is working with us on ethical leadership, and the diversity, equity, inclusion is going to be one piece of that, but it's really going to be under the umbrella of ethical leadership. And I would just note that Jude is a really wonderful person. I think you'll get to enjoy getting to know her as much as I have. She's very talented and brilliant, but she also has an amazing sense of humor, great taste in music, and I think will make this a really enjoyable adventure for us over the coming months.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you. It's nice to have the mystery solved, because you just never know who's going to come into a Zoom room in anticipation. So here we are. And I'm delighted about the work that's in front of us. I'm delighted to see how we can be very creative and impactful and really relevant for the times that we're living in currently. So that's a great introduction. I've got a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. I don't like it. It's not a death by PowerPoint piece at all, but I'll just use it as a bit of backdrop just to talk you through where I come from in terms of the subject matter that we're going to be exploring together. And I said to Catherine, she was asking me, so how do you want me to define you? And as Catherine says, I'm all about ethics and leadership and governance. That's what really delights me. And so that's very much where I've landed in my professional career, which spanned in the very early days. I started as a junior consultant doing diversity and inclusion training and consultancy and what have you. But I love data. I absolutely love data, and run a practice through Abundant Sun where we are very, very diligent in collecting data around diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not like a head count. How many percentages of people do we have there? And what does this? I don't care about what it looks like. I care about the culture, and I care about the health of organizations and communities. So we really, it's not for this session today, but I just want to put out, for starters, that building strategies and helping to make decisions has to be dependent upon really sound data. And when we work in the field of ethics and leadership and diversity and inclusion and justice, we really look to apply management science and data science to what it is that we collect so that we can see where we need to concentrate and what we need to prioritize. So I hope that as we work together, you'll get a really good sense that I don't toe the line when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in being politically correct. I'm not interested in pretending that I don't have my own sets of biases, and I'm not trying to grapple with all the time to make sure I'm not a jerk or I'm treating people unfairly. So just really, it's an exciting time. I do this work because I love people. I do this work because I believe in health and well-being and justice. And I do this work because it gives us the opportunity to be creative, to be innovative, and just to simply be better and stronger and happier. So that's really what I'd like to say just for starters as we go. So let me go into what I'll share with you. I'll start from the beginning. So here we are with you today as the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and this is very much around an ethical performance improvement campaign. And it's a concept that I really started with when I was doing my PhD work. I was really fed up with diversity as people were talking about it. I was fed up with doing. Is that me?
I don't know, but if everyone could mute, that would be greatly appreciated to avoid the feedback. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I was a little bit fed up with just doing diversity training that wasn't going anywhere, and then sometimes making life a little bit more difficult in some circumstances. So that's when I launched into doing a PhD in business, really asking a fundamental question: why is diversity management not working as effectively as it could be after 40, 50 years of investment? And it's that kind of questioning that led me to understand the importance of ethics, leadership, and governance as fundamental building blocks of the agendas around not just social justice, but you'll see here, it says climate and social justice in the built environment. These last 2 years of living through a pandemic and living through all manner of political, cultural, economic crises has really galvanized many of us, not just in Vermont, but I can see across in many other jurisdictions. It's really galvanized us to concentrate on the importance of the built environment when it comes to health and well-being and issues of justice. So I'm really, as I said, looking forward to seeing what it is we generate together by working every other month to have certain conversations around your specific area and jurisdiction. So as we go along, there's just a bit of a group contract that I love to put out here. And what you'll see here are a few bullet points that are really an extraction of the fundamental tenets of engaging in civil discourse. So what it is, it's about being honest. It's about keeping discussions productive. It's about, as citizens, participating in those discussions and listening actively and keeping an open mind. How we take responsibility for what it is that we say and do, and actually really create an environment where together we can respect the intentions of other people. I think there's a very, very important piece of giving others the benefit of the doubt, even when we make mistakes. I think it's very sad when we live in cultures where we think we can't make mistakes or we hide our imperfections. It's not honest, and it doesn't really help us get better. The last second to last one is about not being a bystander, but really engaging in these discussions around justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, ethics, leadership, all the wonderful things that we're here to do. And then also really determining what are our options for action as we go forward. Enlightened action, not reactionary actions. I've had lots of conversations about certain book clubs or films to watch. That's there. It's good. It can be educational, but it's not always relevant to our businesses. And as a stickler for detail and as also a stickler for business, if we're going to have any conversations about this subject matter, then it has to be directly linked to your business at hand and relevant in that way as well. So we can build that as we go along. Any comments there about our group contract? All those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
And do we have any nays in the room? So yeah, no, I think it's really important because I'm really sad that we don't have the opportunity to engage in social discourse with others with whom we don't necessarily see eye to eye or understand or even believe in some instances. So let's really take the opportunities that we have together to practice social discourse in our space so that we can learn and expand. So for this evening, there are just 6 points there. We did a little bit of introduction, so thank you for that. Nice to see who you are. Spend some time talking about what really is diversity. And as it said in the paperwork that went out to you, we'll also look at what is VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and also how it relates to diversity itself. I'll just do a quick intro to environmental and social governance ESG reporting, why that's also important for you within the context of Planning Commission, and really what does justice look like for yourselves. We'll just have a little bit of a conversation about that, and then just set up for some reflections for you to engage in for the next time that we meet. So is that okay, everybody? Yeah?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. So I'd say, and again, we can build upon this, but for starters, the goal of our time together, desired effect is the work we do together will support you in laying stronger ethical foundations and in creating strategies for sustainability that benefit as many people as is possible. I don't want to say everyone because we can't get to everyone and please everyone. Let's be realistic, but let's try and make this as socially good for as many as we can reach in the time that we have. So what's diversity? I'm going to just put that question there, but I'm going to take the slide down. When I say the word, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Quick word associations, chuck them out.
Multiples.
Multiples, just multiples. Thank you. What else comes to mind when you hear the word diversity?
Different.
Mm-hmm.
Different cultures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Broad
Wide
spectrum.
reaching. Wide reaching.
Wide reaching. Mm-hmm. What else?
Broad spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Yeah, I would add that there's actually an organized effort to be diverse, to recognize diversity. And so diversity has become a sort of effort, just a word.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What else do you see when you see or hear the word? Okay, if that's it, that's it. Not a problem. So I think it's really important to define the word. If you look into the dictionary, English language, open it up, what's it going to say? It's going to say that diversity is simply variation, right? It's variation. And if we put it within our cultural context, and I've worked in so many different organizations in so many different places, and I've worked throughout the lifetime of a career where very often if I or an organization that I'm a part of has been invited in to do diversity work, those requests have historically very much come from human resources. And those requests have very much come from human resources to make sure that everybody is trained to do the right thing, to comply with the legislation, don't break any law, don't say anything that you're not supposed to say. And let's make sure that we value all the differences that exist amongst us as people. I have seen numerous statements that say diversity is all the ways in which we're different because of race and gender and disability and how many words can we have? The list would go on ad infinitum if we're only really going to talk about diversity, about that it has to do with people and people's differences. On one hand, of course, yes, it does. But on another hand, that's gravely inaccurate. So I want us all, as we're working together, to have a much broader understanding of what diversity is. We're going to start with the notion of variation as we go through. When we created Abundant Sun nearly 19 years ago, which was in the UK, where we founded it before we moved back into the US context, it was very clear to us that diversity was about the triple bottom line reporting piece: environmental, social, and economic responsibilities that we have. And we were not going to just stay trapped, and I will say trapped, in defining diversity only in terms of people and human resources. Right? So here we are now in 2022, and I'm so delighted to see that there's now an intersection between understanding justice in terms of environmental justice, social justice, and economic justice. So we've got to spend the time that we all have together over the next cycle to really understand what that means for you as leaders, what that means for you as data collectors and as decision makers and as people who are fundamentally responsible for public health and safety. Okay? So we're going to think about it much more broadly than perhaps the society that we live in suggests that it is, which I think is also key. Great. So justice is social, justice is environmental, and justice is economic. And any organization that exists on this planet should embrace those words wholeheartedly as they determine what their business is and how they execute it. I want to also just talk about planning in our VUCA world. And as I'd mentioned, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And one of the reasons why I love VUCA is, and I'd mentioned earlier, I was talking to somebody earlier today, I think we were just doing an interview for a job posting, and they said, well, why do you do diversity, equity, and inclusion work? I said, well, because it's about creativity and innovation. And that's really the exciting piece. I personally, and I know that it's fundamental to who I am as a character, I love VUCA. I loved VUCA as a child. I was very exploratory. I was always pushing boundaries. I always wanted to know more. I wanted to do something different. But not everybody feels comfortable with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I would say that for many of us who don't feel comfortable, we've had some pretty tough lessons over the last 2 years, living through a pandemic when the world as we knew it was turned inside out and on its head. But I want us to look at this model of the VUCA world template in the context of diversity as well. Because if there is any variation in a system that is presented, it is going to, however long, it's going to throw that system into a VUCA state, right? It's going to be disruptive. And we might lose our way, or we might get confused, or we might actually make really wrong decisions because we don't have enough information. So volatility refers to the speed, volume, nature, magnitude of phenomena that may or may not be in the pattern, in a pattern from volatility, form, that should say form, there's an error in this actual slide salad that I'm seeing. Sorry, it's not an abundant sun salad. But volatility increases complexity, right? Complexity is wonderful. The work we do together, we should look upon this as a gorgeous puzzle that needs to be solved in some way, shape, or form. So complexity describes the number of different states a system can get into at a certain point in time. The amount states a system can get into, the higher the complexity and the harder it is to get to manage it as we're looking at it. And then uncertainty is when, like, we don't actually know what's going on. We don't understand. There are no concrete trends, there are no patterns. We can't make rhyme or reason of what's going on. All the things that we think are normative have all of a sudden just disappeared. And we find it difficult to establish what will happen next. So there's uncertainty that's there. And then the ambiguity piece is where there can be multiple interpretations. Sure, we appreciate when we're talking about diversity and diversity of perspectives and priorities, there's always going to be ambiguity, which can sometimes, as decision makers, make it really hard to make good choices and to achieve the desired outcomes that you have as well. So that to me is something that's very essential, looking at the VUCA world. Can I just ask, for the last 2 years, as we've been living through the pandemic, and this is absolutely VUCA incarnate for ourselves, like, what have been some of your biggest challenges as a board of commissioners making decisions inside of all this VUCA in the past 2 years?
So this is Bill. I'll kick it off.
Sure.
Hopefully have others follow. I have to say that I found the Board of Commissioners to be a haven of regularity as opposed to my regular job. I work in public health, and we've been dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic directly. And you're absolutely right, VUCA describes it perfectly well. And it is really fascinating. I can't wait to hear some more. But I think that what we've seen here so far, and we're really just beginning, is that we have a tendency sometimes in political action to follow the herd, where when we talked about this early on, that we wanted to consider our role in addressing inequity and injustice and other issues over the next few years, we didn't want to act early. We wanted to learn. And I think that that's reflected in your description here. We saw that it is quite complex. It is quite difficult, and it is not easily navigated. But I think that if we know that going in, we'll be better off as we emerge from our work to do good things. And that's my goal.
Excellent. Thank you, William. What else have others seen as some of the challenges, things that have changed? There's a lot that's changed, right? There's a lot of variation in the system in 2022, much more so than there was, I think, when we started. How have you felt personally impacted at all?
I think there's been a loss of human touch.
Physically and
it's, Zoom meetings are okay, right? But we've got fake backgrounds, and I like to shake a person's hand or hug a person and look them in the eye when I'm speaking to them.
Yeah. And there's a massive adjustment that's had to be made in light of that loss of a human touch. Yeah.
And I
that,
think, and I think along with that, the challenge has been that there's a very broad range of worry, from people who have very, very little worry to people who are worried all the time about the pandemic. And that's been difficult to manage.
Thank you, Kirk. Al, I know you had your hand up, and Sylvia, I'll get to you after Al comes in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I follow up. I agree with what Kirk said. Not speaking now as a commissioner, but just somebody who lives in the outside world. I don't worry about getting COVID because I've always followed the health department's advice, and I've got my 3 shots. What I worry more about is going into stores. I always wear a mask, not because I'm worried about catching the disease, but more worried about infecting somebody who's either not inoculated or children in particular. And I'm always amazed. I came from a background of the common good, and I believe very much in the common compact, or the common compact. So I find it somewhat difficult for people who, and I understand the individuality and individualism, but not they understanding a sense of responsibility for children, basically for children, because that's my biggest concern in a grocery store, if you will.
Yeah, thank you very much, Al. Thank you. Sylvia.
Yeah, so I am also going to piggyback on what Kurt, or expand on what Kurt said. I see it with work, and I also see it within our commissioner meeting. Used to be very chatty, very, we check in, and I would just say, if you were in person and we were in the same room, I think there would be more conversation, more questions. And that's what I see is missing from presentations, from meetings. I see it in our staff meeting. Used to be, we meet every other Monday, all morning. Used to be, again, very robust question and answer period. That is dialed down immensely. What has picked up, though, is communicating effectively via email. And also using Teams a lot, calling. Instead of using an email, I'll call them on Teams. That's huge because it's like a video phone call. It's like FaceTime, right? Yeah. So it's ironic that at one end, the group situation is diminished, yet sometimes the one-on-one communication, which used to just be handled by an email, now can be visual.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you, Sylvia. And that really does speak to some of the challenges that we have with change, and how do we adapt to different circumstances so that we can create new patterns, right? I mean, and that's the whole thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and justice, where we put it in there as well. We have to be constantly evolving. Yeah, and it's not change management. Sometimes you get into change management and we're changing a system, or we have to adopt a new, it's really about how are we going to transform and really learn from and get to a better place than we were before something had started. So the change piece, I think, is just so incredibly vital. But to the initial point as well for Kirk, and I think that this is so fundamental to our time together as well, is the restoration of humanity, right? The restoration of connectivity, the restoration of ensuring that all of you, and actually all the communities that you serve, really have a sense of value and belonging, right? Because it's been really hard for people to get through whatever these past 2 years may have served up to individuals, either personally or professionally. So I want us to just really stay focused in upon, how hopefully we don't stay in a Zoom context forever. But you know what? Sometimes we have to live the world as though this is all that's ever going to be. And how do we make the most of it if we can't get back to where we started from? And so there's always going to be something good inside of that. As Sylvia says, I might not be able to do this, but oh my goodness, I'm not burning up fuel, going up and down. The amount of miles I used to put on 22A going from Southern Vermont to Burlington every year was unbelievable. It really, honestly, and I was unhealthy because I was in the car for too long, and you couldn't get as many things done. So whilst there's a real detriment and I don't like it and I want it to go away, actually, this is pretty good in some ways, So where do we find the balance with it all and stay critical? It's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, but in this problem solving and puzzle making, it's like, how do we really stay critical about this? And not get too overwhelmed with some of the longings or the desires that we may have. Okay, I know we don't have a huge amount of time left. As you can see, I like to talk and we could go on forever, but I won't. So I'll just leave you a little bit more framework. So this is the environmental and social governance framework that I'd love for you to look at a little bit further. I did a bit of research before we came in today because I wanted to see, well, how many regional planning commissions are actually leaning into environmental and social governance reporting. I could only find one. It was something called Champaign, not Champlain, but Champaign something or another in the Midwest. But I'm going to do a little bit more research for you as we go through our time together. I was able to see that there's something to do with HUD and ESG. So Catherine, maybe when you and I have our next one-to-one, we can look at that a little bit more closely and see where we're going with it. But I just wanted to define what environmental justice is for all of you. And as I do that, just think about your roles and responsibilities inside of the commission. I find it fascinating. For the last 8 years, Abundant Sun has had a contract with the equivalent of the Environmental Protection Agency in a country that I shall not name, not for any wrong reasons or anything, but there was such a misunderstanding about what environmental justice is. It's not recycling. It's not driving an electric car. It's not going up and picking all the garbage up off the highway to make it look better. It's not going down to the farmer's market. It's really looking critically at what environmental justice involves identifying and addressing as appropriate, disproportionately high and adverse human health or environmental effects on an agency's programs, policies, activities on minority and low-income populations. End of. That's what it's about. I had the pleasure of one of my colleagues now, he and I were on the Regional Economic Development Working Group down in Bennington County when I lived in Southern Vermont. He's an engineer. And we did a presentation a couple of weeks ago to RPI, which is his alma mater down in Rensselaer. And it was just with a group of students who are training. It's like, okay, these are the things that you have to be considering now as you're coming into being an engineer in the 21st century. You can't not know these things because you've got some tough decisions to make. And there are going to be some serious ethical dilemmas that are going to be posed. A part of that series that the students are going through is looking at the Flint water crisis. And so we were kicking off the series kind of looking at that and looking at some of the challenges that they've had down in Bennington in particular with some of the environmental disasters that have had an enormously negative impact on public health. So, it has always been our job, but it may not have always been as articulated as clearly as it could be. So that's that piece there. And I think that, for us, as we're looking at it, there are so many enormous benefits of justice. We have greater creativity, balance, harmony, health, well-being, and ultimately abundance. That's what we're aiming for, right? And it's not, we can do this. One of the reasons why I love working with Abundant Sun is like, we do this work in such an unbiased way, right? You have to be fair every step along the way. And as I said earlier, how can we benefit the most people as is humanly possible for us to benefit at any time? I fundamentally believe we are powerful beyond measure in our ability to bring peace and joy to all people through the built environment. Whether it's transportation in a road or a house, I don't mind, I don't care what it is, but we have the power through what it is that we know, through the skills that we have to really make it a beautiful place. So this is just a little bit of an overview of, for me, what I think is the big picture. We're looking, as we work together, how do we have greater visionary leadership, integrity? How do we have greater employee engagement when we're looking at the internal culture and the people that we need to execute the wonderful things that we do and will be doing. It's about innovation, fair pay, transparency, environmental sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion is in there. All these wonderful things. It's a big picture job. And so these are the things that I'm really looking forward to exploring with you, having conversations around and building. So as I mentioned, Catherine and I will have our one-to-ones in between when we all meet together. So we can keep feeding you some ideas. We didn't do any sort of pre-session reading today. I think homework is sometimes a bit of a headache, and I don't like to lumber people too much with it, but we will be giving you some light reading material as we go through the next few sessions together. And so what I will leave you with are just these questions here. Why is ethical, well, it should say what, I'm sorry. What does ethical performance mean to Northwest Regional Planning Commission? And what vision, look at how badly I'm doing my spelling today. I have to apologize. Catherine hasn't told you that I'm nowhere near Vermont, and it is now 20 minutes to 1 in the morning where I am. So apologies for the typographical errors in that last penultimate slide, because my gosh, I am ready for bed. There we go. Okay, Jude's making some snappy corrections on that one. These, my friends, are the questions that I'd like you to consider. What does ethical performance mean to Northwest Regional Planning Commission? What does it mean to you, right? You don't have to answer these now. What vision do you have of it now as a commission when it comes to ethics? And what do you have for it in the future? Where do you want to see it go? If you have to make it better, given the conditions that we're living in, given the challenges that we're confronted by, what do you want to do to actually bring better to the folks for whom you're responsible? So I think we are just about to time, because I know that we had 45 minutes, Catherine. That's a thank you from me. See you again soon. So I'll take that down. And then I will also just yield the floor for a minute or two to see if you have any thoughts, any questions. You can ask me anything, because I want to make sure that you get the absolute most out of this as well. So if you're curious, or I don't care what it is, but we got a minute. Yeah.
Dude, can we have a copy of the program you just put on the screen?
100%. I will PDF that and send it to Catherine before I go to sleep.
Well, you can do it tomorrow morning if you'd like.
But it is, but wait, no, Al, it is tomorrow morning for me already now.
Well, let's put it this way, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I promise I will do that.
Thank you.
In the ESG, why isn't there a bigger focus on economic justice?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Barclay. And I think it gets sometimes subsumed inside of the S, but you know, I don't have an answer to that. It's a question I've asked myself. I think this is my philosophy. When I talked about the triple bottom line reporting, you're familiar with triple bottom line reporting, everybody? Are you? No. Okay, so
It's new to me.
Say again. It's new. Oh, okay. So I can share some of that with you as well. So basically, John Elkington, lovely guy, known from the UK, he coined this phrase, triple bottom line reporting. He had a consultancy called Sustainability, and he was very much a part of the green movement in the UK from the beginning of time. So John basically said, well, we can't keep judging the effectiveness of any organization just on its financial balance sheet at the end of a year, right? Like, because that's the only value we're really looking at is economic. So John introduced the triple bottom line. From the economic, he said, we have also the social and the environmental now. And at that point in time, for the last 20, 30 years, you have enormous organizations, the Shells of the world, the Coca-Colas, the McDonald's, like everybody knows, oh gosh, we're not going to just be judged solely because of how well we're doing financially at the end of the year. We have this whole thing about social and environmental impact that we've completely been avoiding because all we've been caring about is that financial bottom line, right? So the game changed when John started talking about triple bottom line reporting. I'm happy to share some of that with you before we come together. So Barclay, I think, it's just my philosophy, I think that it only says environmental and social governance because there's been so much of the economic that is dominated and it's trying to counterbalance. That's my theory. Yeah, good question. One more?
So this is Bill. I think it might be useful to share with the Board of Commissioners the overall project that we've engaged you to help us through. You mentioned, for example, Dr. Rigley, that you are meeting with Catherine in between. You might lay out what we've actually hoped to put together with you over the course of the coming months.
Absolutely. I will, when I do the PDF of what we've gone through this evening, I'll also add a little bit because I realized that would be extremely helpful because you will not necessarily have seen our letter of engagement. Good. Catherine, anything from you before we go? I go.
I don't have anything to add to what you have said, except to say thanks. And I think this is going to be a great way to build on our knowledge and set us up for having these conversations at the same time that we are embarking on the update of our regional plan. And I think it's going to be a good parallel conversation.
That's great. Well, excellent. Well, thank you everybody so much for your time this evening. If you have any questions or curiosities, and I love a curiosity, just let me know. My email is at the very end of the PowerPoint presentation we went through today. So you are more than welcome to contact me in between sessions there or use Catherine as a conduit if you need to as well. But yeah, wonderful time. Enjoy the spring, winter, whatever you have that's happening weather-wise over there in Vermont. It's lovely
today.
Are you in Hawaii? Are you in Hawaii?
No, I'm not in Hawaii. I am actually, I am in Portugal.
Oh, the other way. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
For the time being, hey, we're all lucky, no matter where we are right now. I'm lucky that we're on this call. You know, it's a good day. But yeah, no, I actually, for a number of reasons, and you'll get to know me over the, we have a year together, don't we, Catherine? We've got 6 meetings, so every other month. So we've got 5 more sessions to go. But we'll get to know each other really well, because this isn't just about you being the commissioners. It's also about you being yourselves as individuals. And I'm here to support you on all fronts as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
stuff.
you so much.
Have a great evening, everybody. Take good care. Bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
So I will just say that when the executive committee engaged in this effort to try to understand really what we wanted in the Northwest Regional Planning Commission to prepare us to be better actors in this arena, we didn't really know a lot about people to bring in. And I'm so appreciative that Catherine, you did, because clearly I've seen that Dr. Rakeley is going to be just wonderful for us. And I thank you for knowing that and for being here with us so that we could benefit from what you know, because we couldn't have found someone like her without you.
True.
Real
go ahead, Bob.
quick.
Here,
Bill.
here.
Yeah. So yes, I'm looking very forward to this as I get into more trouble every day. I guess one of the questions with Dean recording this, and about, what have I got? About half of our commissioners are here. We've got a quorum of towns, but we don't have a lot of the commissioners. Are we going to be able to take pockets of these recordings and put together a package so people can see what they've missed or catch up on what they've missed?
Yes, so we're doing a couple of things. We are setting up a YouTube channel to host our board meetings, so they'll be available. And then Dea is helping me gather up all the resources that we've collected about ethical leadership and diversity inclusion. And we're going to be setting up a separate space on our website where that will all live in one place. So you don't have to say, when did that get emailed to me? But you can just go there. So
Great.
Dea is helping me with that, and then we'll have the YouTube channel.
Because that'd be great to have a package that we can, whether we use it ourselves or even if we end up going to our other boards, we can say, look, here's a resource we have we can tap into.
Especially as
down this
we're
journey.
hoping to get some of our vacancies filled after town meeting day. I think that will be important for folks to be able to have seen this session.
Yeah, I really love the idea of the town, the YouTube channel. I think that that'll be great for each of us, if you'd like to point that out to our municipalities to say, hey, look, here's some, because it's not good enough for us to learn. We need to share. And this is a good way for us to share. Thank you for thinking of that too, Catherine, and the whole staff that's there working with you. I'm just so proud to be a part of it. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, thoughts about our initial presentation relative to, I think, ethical leadership? I really appreciate that. That's a wonderful title for all of us to carry with us. Okay. So,
Bill?
yeah, go ahead, Al. Or I'm sorry, that's Sylvia?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Bill. One thing I'm also discovering is many communities have a community Facebook page. I just learned about Swanton. I know Alberg. I've heard that Alberg has a wonderful one. And there's stipulations, no political stuff. And it's meant for sharing information. Once we get the YouTube channel up, maybe getting the link on these Facebook pages, finding out who all the admins are, because I think it's another opportunity to get our good message and our great presenters to the general public.
Yeah, great idea, Sylvia. And anyone here representing municipality, I think that that's a good example of how we can take what we're doing back to our communities. We had our informational meeting last night in Bakersfield for town meeting day, which is going to unfortunately not be in person. And I described what the Northwest Regional Planning Commission does in the absence of county government in Vermont. And I think a lot of people not only could benefit from learning more about what the NRPC does for Franklin and Grand Isle counties, but also that we should take it to heart that it's our responsibility to try to provide our municipalities as much as we can from our experiences here so that they can benefit too. And I thank you for those ideas as we go along in this process of the next roughly year engaging in this ethical leadership journey. Well, it's a little difficult to move on to committee reports, but we do need to do so. And so if you're ready, we'll start to go through those reports, and a reminder that there are written reports in the packet that was sent. We'll start off with finance and operations. I don't think that Harold was on, so it might be that you'll have to help us with that, Catherine. Or is there someone else from the committee?
Carol couldn't make it tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions on the financial reports.
So any questions? You've got the profit and loss budget versus actual on page 8, the balance sheet on page 9, they look very similar to last month in many ways. But obviously we've moved a fraction of our fiscal year, 1/12 of it. Looks good to me. Any questions for what would normally be our finance and operations? All right, we'll move on to personnel. Lori, I know you've been busy.
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I spaced last week on the executive committee meeting some reason. I don't know what the next day I said, missed that one. But yeah, we had quite a process in hiring the Working Communities Challenge program manager, but we did end up with Barry Lampke, who's a very experienced and ready to hit the ground running person. And so I think given the twists and turns we went through, I think we ended up as best we could.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone that participated in that process. It is an extremely challenging role to help us in Vermont, and particularly in our 2 counties, to try to bring more housing to help people live better lives. And I noted in some of our discussions through the process that we need someone who really can almost make something out of nothing. And Barry has exemplified that in a variety of roles. And I think we're really lucky to get him, and we'll see him in action soon. He comes from ECHO, the Leahy Echo Center, and where he's done work with improving the quality of Lake Champlain. And we're now looking for him to lead us as we start to look at improving the capacity for Franklin and Grand Isle County residents to find good housing. All right, we'll move then to the executive committee. And I think the most important news to share there is that we have an action item at the end of our agenda tonight to provide to you an opportunity to endorse our recommendations for the Energy and Climate Committee, which will be another extremely important effort for us as we move on into the future. And of course, we continue to do a variety of other Regional Planning Commission oversight functions. One of the more important for this most recent meeting in February was to engage in the Northwest Vermont Regional Foundation meeting, and Kirk will be providing a brief report there where we had elections. We'll move then to project review. Bob?
And project review, what we're actually going to talk about is our meeting from February, the December and January activity we did back at the January meeting. We did kind of pre-review on 3 projects, 4 projects. There's nothing that we made a statement that needs board action here. We continued some more with the Purpose Energy project in Enosburg. We reviewed a proposed solar project in Sheldon, and we also discussed Act 250 project in the city of St. Albans, where they're doing some culvert and wetland treatment work down near Lemna Drive. So there's really nothing earth-shattering in any of these from what we've gone through. So if anyone has any specific questions, we can go through it, but in interest of time, I'd like to move on.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I would say from participating in these meetings to a limited degree, I'm really proud to see that this committee makes recommendations and asks questions of the permit holders or those who come before the committee, and it improves. The one that Bob mentioned, the energy systems project in Enosburg, we've seen actual improvement in that project over several months of deliberations by the committee, and I'm very, very pleased with that effort. Thank you, Bob, and thanks to all on Project Review.
Actually, I guess, Bill, one more piece to tuck in there is, in light of our justice discussion, we have been taking not environmental, social, and economic justice view at all of our projects recently, and which is more than we had done in the past. So we're trying to adapt some of our learning already.
Yes, thanks, Bob, for that reminder. So Transportation Advisory Committee, Harold's not here for that. I'm not sure, Bethany, if you have anything that you might share there.
Sure, and many are on the call that attended that meeting. But the TAC met, and we invited our local legislators to just have a roundtable to talk about transportation issues. And we had 3 participate, which, given the busy session, was much appreciated. And, many of the topics are things, the typical candidates. We talked about bridges, roads, paving, resiliency, public transit. But it was still a really good discussion. And I don't know if any of the TAC members have anything to add.
Yes, please. Any TAC members, if you have something, this would be a great time. Okay, I'm sorry I couldn't make that because I really would have liked to. I was on the West Coast, and the time being 3 hours earlier, I was right in the middle of teaching a class. So I'm glad we had good turnout and good responses there. We'll move then to the Energy Committee. I don't know, Bob, if you want to introduce a little bit of where we're going at the end of the meeting here.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it when we get to that line item.
Okay, very good. Brownfield Committee, we don't have Laz to speak to this tonight. We sent him off in a grand fashion as much as we could last time. And is there someone here that could speak to Brownfields Committee for us today?
I can collect questions if you have any on the written report and bring them back to Greta, but I have nothing to add. Except that we do need a commissioner who might be interested in serving on the Brownfields Committee. If you have interest in that, let me know, because there is a board seat. That committee does tend to meet during the day, so you should know that about that committee.
Very good. Yeah, that's a very important effort in our state overall. I can tell you, I've known people that worked in that. Really valuable effort to convert land that was previously not good for much into land that is really wonderful for many communities. So if you want to make a difference, please do step up. We could use your help in the Brownfields Committee, especially if you have time during the day. Elizabeth, the Regional Plan and Policy Committee.
Hi there. So we are meeting on Monday, and I'm going to pull up the agenda. So we're going to outline key points, the timeline and the outreach plan as we begin the work of the update. And we're going to look at the regional energy plan update and how we want to move forward with that. And I think it's important that we, as Jude mentioned, that we use this time with abundant sun as part of the work that we're doing with the update. So we'll be getting cranking after Monday and looking forward to a really thorough update.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Monday meeting. We'll then turn to the Vermont Economic Progress Council. Al, any report there?
Yes, actually, this is the first time in many months that I'll be attending a VEPSI meeting. Beta Technologies, which is a company that's presently in South Burlington, and they're developing both electronic planes and electronic helicopters. They have an option to buy or rent the old Eveready plant in St. Albans to make batteries. It would start off with about 30 jobs and move up to, I believe, 200 jobs over the next couple of years. The big issue is that New York State is competing very heavily to attract them to come over to Plattsburgh. And so this VEPSI grant, the VEGI grant to help them train in new employees is a critical component to try to keep them in Vermont. Fortunately, the owner of this company, or the CEO, is a Vermonter. He would love to stay in Vermont. And so our hope is that VEPSI and the VEGI grant will be sufficient to keep him in Vermont, and in particular, St. Albans.
That's great. That would be a real win-win to use that property and to keep Beta here.
Yep.
Hear a lot of great things about them, and certainly is the future. Thank you,
And,
Al.
Emily drafted and I signed, and we submitted a letter of support for that tax credit. It's in an existing building in our growth area, so it's a really good location as well as a really great project.
Catherine, could you email that letter, a copy of that letter to me?
Yes, I can. Sorry, I usually do it. I'm sorry, it's been so long, I totally forgot.
I know.
Years.
So that would be helpful to me when I represent us.
Is there a time frame we're looking at where we might hear of a decision?
No, this is just a pre-application.
Okay. So it'll be some time, but if there's anything that we can do further, please let us know. And so I'm sure that the agencies, the governor, that our congressional district are doing something there, but if they're not, we should get them involved.
Right.
Big. Thank you, Al. We'll go to Green Mountain Transit. Bob, do you want to report there?
Sure, Catherine, correct me. We've continuing with our contract negotiations for the rural end of the business. Hopefully we'll get some resolution here in the next couple of weeks. And the other thing we've been doing some recent talk about is safety concerns and potential some type of monitoring to help it at the transit center and on the buses potentially. The situation with COVID and all the extra stress has really kind of pushed a lot of things over the edge. So we're trying to see what we can do to help improve our method of dealing with the public.
Yeah,
anything else, Catherine?
I'll just add that that was an interesting discussion at the board. It was while we're dealing with public safety and law enforcement issues, there was an equal conversation about what we should be doing to support mental health and social service needs of those individuals that might be causing safety concerns. So it was an evolution of a discussion that was very different than we would have had a few years ago.
Yeah, a lot of our problems are much more wide spreading with their roots and their solutions than we sometimes think. All right, thank you both. Clean Water Advisory Committee. Anyone from staff? I saw.
I think we're very, I think we're very shortly going to come with a recommendation that that be dissolved.
Okay. Lynn, you want to report on Healthy Roots Advisory Committee?
We did not meet. The annual report should be out and all the commissioners should be getting at least a digital copy, but I'm not sure why it hasn't come out. I think I'll be asking them, but it looks good, so you'll be happy when you see it.
Great. Thank you, Lynn, and everyone working on the Healthy Roots team. It's a great effort. Now, Kirk, Northwest Vermont Regional Foundation.
You're muted.
Thank you, Catherine. You can tell I'm out of practice. We did meet. There was an election of officers. Kirk Waite as president, Bill Irwin as vice president, Andy Alling as secretary, and Rowena Brown as treasurer. I would say that we reviewed the finances, but there wasn't a lot to review there. I think the foundation has been victims, probably the wrong word, but a victim of COVID. We really haven't done much for the last couple of years. We haven't had a lot of regular meetings and have not put a lot of effort into trying to figure out how we can use the foundation to further the goals of the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. And I'm hoping that we as a team can turn that around over the next year.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. And I wanted to note really valuable effort here to keep Kirk in as our president. Kirk helped us initiate the foundation, and to have his leadership as we renew our efforts post-COVID will be very valuable. And I thank you for your time and effort on that, Kirk.
My pleasure. Thanks.
All right, we'll ask if there are staff updates.
I'll just throw some really quick things in the interest of time. First is that there's a lot of legislative activity going on with housing, economic development, energy, Act 250. And rather than trying to take time to read through a bunch of bills, what I'll do is in our follow-up email to everybody, I'll give a summary of what's going on. Next week, they're on town meeting break. So if it doesn't happen this week, you'll have some time to read the email and catch up on what is going on. And then I will also wanted to add that this is kind of a boring internal administrative thing, but for us, it's really exciting that we're about to start using our new project management software that Bethany and Dean have been spending considerable time working on to try to get that just right. And Bethany's really been leading us through that process. And I think it's going to really improve many of our internal functions. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I know there's got to be somebody besides me that likes this kind of stuff, but it's part of the board, so.
I like it. And so it's not Microsoft Project, it's somebody else, something else? Ah, okay.
Smartsheet.
Interesting.
It integrates our timesheets with our QuickBooks and our project management side,
Wow.
so it's pretty cool.
Wow, yeah, okay. Congratulations and good luck. Anyone else from staff have something that want to make sure we hear? And again, there's pages of staff reports in your packet that's been provided to you tonight. And as usual, I'm just so pleased to see how much this team does. And thank you all.
I was going to ask if you were going to update about the water quality councils. Is that why you have your hand up?
Yes, I was happy to do that. Membership in the 2 basin water councils was announced on Friday, so we are polling people to find out when it would be possible for them to meet, and we are looking at the 3rd and 4th week of March. So those groups will get up and running and working on some organizational matters, several different things for them to attend to. We're also planning how we will be working with the partner organizations and those who will be helping to complete the water quality projects. The last thing I'll mention is kind of an important one, big questions being worked on at the state level that we're participating in the discussions of, including the formula that will be used to distribute the funds that are going to be available this year. So what will the formula be like specifically to distribute those funds across the basin? And we were trading emails just today about that. So more news to follow. And if there are any questions, let me know.
Yes, thanks, Dean. It was interesting, the email you sent out. There are 2 ski instructors from Smugs on the commission, and I saw them both this weekend and said, hey, it's great to know you are engaged in water conservation, and it's nice. All right. We will now move to the next item of the agenda, which is really seen on page 16 of your packet, and that is our Energy and Climate Committee membership. The staff sent out a letter to a variety of people for their interest in becoming citizen members. And we also, of course, have had some interest expressed by you to be our commissioner members. We have a large committee. Right now, you can see that we have 7 seats for commissioners, and we have 5 seats for citizen members. That gives us a group of 12. And then we had 2 others who volunteered from the public, and we, rather than just say, no, you didn't get that, we asked them to be alternates, and that allows them to obviously participate in the meetings as a member of the public. But if something arises where one of our citizen members has to move on, it allows them to have a lot more awareness and perhaps to jump right in if there is a vacancy there. And with regard to vacancies, because we do have 1 available seat among commissioners, where we have Peter Zamor, Bob Bierman, myself, Al Vogel, Vincent Hickey, Kirk Waite. We have 1 left. If there's anyone here who would like to be appointed, we can add you to this list. Barclay, I see your hand up.
I think I had sent an email to Catherine earlier in the week that said I would be interested in filling that final seat.
Great.
Sorry, I've been out, so I didn't see it if you sent it. Great.
Okay, so I fully endorse that. It's great to have another Islander on the board or on the committee. If what I would like is, this is actually a membership that I can make on my own, but I told the executive committee that I'd like to bring it to the full board of commissioners for your ratification, because I feel like while I have the right to appoint these individuals, I'd like to make sure that you agree. And so I'd entertain a motion relative to ratifying this with the addition of Barclay to fill that 1 available seat. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Is there a second?
Second.
And was that Sarah? Yes, very good. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I think there's a lot of work that's going to come from this. It's really deeply appreciated, those of you that have committed to some additional time. It's not huge, but we know that anytime you join a committee, you're likely to give up a day a month. And I really am so thankful that so many of you are willing to do that for our committees. If there's no further discussion, and oh yeah, go ahead, Al.
Could you, either you or Catherine, help me understand the use or the membership of citizen members? And given the size of that list, along with the commissioners, it seems to me we're going to have to, I hope it's not going to be by Zoom. I hope we're going to be able to meet in some sort of a room. Did the health department remove the masks Tuesday? I don't know. I didn't hear the governor.
I don't think we've done that yet, Al. But I also didn't have time to listen to the governor. I just react to what he says later. Yeah, I think that size of group, it's going to be interesting for us. We'll have to start to look even broader. about how we'll conduct some of our bigger committee activities. You know, we are starting to reach the end of COVID, where I think we're generally trying to say we cannot predict its end, but what we have to do is start to learn to live with it. And that likely means too that we'll have to learn to work with it. I can say that our health department, we're looking at probably returning to work more in April. And that may be something we think about here, but that is a large group and we will have to look at larger spaces. I think generally we want to always look to good size spaces for the larger committee activities that we engage in.
Yeah, I assume that Denise Smith can get us back into the hospital.
Yeah, the hospitals are tough. They really are very protective of their space to prevent infection. So we may have to look elsewhere too, but
I
we'll
hear
see.
there's going to be a nice new meeting space down in St. Albans Bay.
That might be one place. The other place is the St. Albans Museum.
Yep. So there's lots of places we can look at.
Okay.
Great. Any other discussion on the Energy and Climate Committee membership? All right, not hearing or seeing any hands or yes, Bob, Al.
Who's going to be the staff person?
So that's
Marlena Valenta, our new climate and energy planner, and she'll have my support as well as Greta's.
Okay, thank you.
and she wrote some nice letters telling folks once this is ratified that they've been accepted to the committee. So nice to see that. All right. All in favor ratifying this slate of commissioners and citizen members for the Energy and Climate Committee membership, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Are there any abstentions? Very good. Thank you all. I believe I've got to scroll up to the top of my 17-page document here. We are at the budget adjustment draft recommendation by the Finance Committee. That too is enclosed.
With Harold's absence, I'm happy to just do a quick overview if you'd like, Bill.
Thank you, please.
So in a nutshell, you'll see that our bottom line hasn't changed substantially. We're still looking at a balanced budget, essentially, that has a $50,000 surplus at the end. Our major changes with revenue were related just to our spending patterns. We have Agency of Transportation and emergency management contracts that end in September. So they span 2 fiscal years, and sometimes our spending patterns mean that our budget estimates were off a little bit. We also added several new municipal projects, most notably with the bylaw modernization grants that were recently awarded, and congratulations to all those towns. And then the other big percentage increase, although it's not a big dollar amount increase, is related to the grant we got to do the wayfinding signs on the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail. And if you haven't been out to see them yet, they're really great. So when the weather's warmer, you can go and see them. In terms of expenses, we did some adjustments to reflect some of the changes in payroll and benefits related to our staffing shifts, as well as bringing on the CUD director for a couple of months. And then we changed the building amounts to reflect the actual expenditures that happened in this fiscal year. And some of that was the expenditures were a little greater, and some of it was just the timing of the spending. Rather than it being before June 30th, it was after. And then our software budget is increasing related to the project management software. And then the other increase in cost is related to the recreation grant that we got for the trail signs, where the revenue was shown up above. And that is it in a nutshell.
Wow, that was great. And I applaud the efforts to remain as much a nonprofit as possible. We do it by a razor's edge so well. Okay. And does that require board action? I think it does, doesn't it?
Yes, the Finance Committee did recommend this budget adjustment to the Board of Commissioners.
Right.
For their adoption.
So is there a motion relative to the fiscal year 22 budget adjustment.
I'll make
moved.
that motion.
Second,
Thank you, Barclay. Sound like Al with a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I don't see any hands and I don't hear anyone. So we'll take that as no discussion. All in favor of the fiscal year 22 budget adjustment as described in the packet tonight, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, any abstentions? Very good, thank you. The motion passes. Are there any commissioner announcements? All right, I don't hear any. I would then take a motion relative to adjournment.
So moved, Marietta.
Thank you. Is there a second?
don't need a second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all for everything you do, and we will talk to you in March or at committee meetings between now and then. Take care.
Good evening, everybody.
Thanks. Good night.
Everyone.
Good night.